Hi everybody, welcome to our podcast all about the insights. Our guest today is freelance researcher Elli Siapkidou. Ellie, lovely to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
No problem at all. It's always great to have like-minded people on the show. Ellie, as you know, we are really interested in insights and how they can help businesses, what challenges they can help businesses overcome. And we'll be speaking a lot around that today. But to begin with, it would be really interesting just to hear a little bit about your story and your journey to where you are today.
Uh, Thank you. My background is in research. I am an economist by training. I studied here in the United Kingdom at Oxford, and then I did an MPhil in social sciences, and then I did a PhD in social sciences. And after not being very interested in academia, I decided to work for business and for various NGOs and in the insight sector, primarily in terms of data analysis, desktop research, interviews, workshops, the whole range of qualitative and quantitative research, and try to bring these the findings to clients and to the relevant sort of stakeholders. So I work as a freelancer in various roles as research director, and I'm really passionate about getting, to the bottom of what the data and what the analysis tells you, but more importantly, to also make that relevant to the audience and who you're speaking to.
Yeah, 100%. That is one of the critical things. It's interesting that you speak around kind of moving from academia to commercial. Have been broadly across that route in the past. How did you find that leap?
So it was quite interesting. It's a very different world. Obviously, the robustness of the methodology is a key differentiator. It's different in the academic world, and you go under much greater scrutiny rather than the commercial. But it's also, I think, the fact that there is that sort of practitioner's angle in business, or or in NGOs. There is that so what question at the end, and how whatever it is that you have discovered or uncovered is relevant. So there is that element much tighter to the reality and the current developments. In academia, you have the luxury of being more detached.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. And in terms of kind of being involved in insights and staying in insights, what are your drivers and motivations to stay in the field? What is it that's keeping you hooked into the insight industry?
I think it's just getting to the bottom of things and being curious and being passionate about understanding what are the key elements of whatever the issue is. So, I enjoy trying to understand the facts and the data, and really getting under the skin of the insights and the findings, really focusing on what they're telling us, and importantly, how all of this can be turned into actionable information and informed decision making. I think, a lot of businesses have sometimes, unfortunately, the tendency to just be run or kind of make decisions slightly with finger in the air. So I think insights can really be a lever for much more informed decision making.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense, and we see a lot of that ourselves. In terms of kind of any of your career, have you seen where it's been particularly uh, challenging, or particularly any particular successes in kind of getting those stories to practitioners?
Um, I think there are a couple of challenges in the sector. One is when businesses say they want to be run by insights, but they don't really mean it. So often they do ask for, analysis or data or a sort of stakeholder engagement listening exercise. But then when they do see the findings, they don't want to embrace them, or they don't want to hear some of the more ugly truths, or less comfortable truths. So then that's a challenge, because they're losing the value of it. So they have to be open-minded to what actually the analysis is telling you,
Yeah,
and be brave enough to take it on board and then inform their decisions. And the other challenge, I think, is that um, there's also often the tendency to interfere with methodology. So whether it's to make your analysis faster or quicker, or move it to a particular direction, that is also sometimes a challenge. But I think the greatest success stories is when you have businesses that are really looking to get the most of the value of insights. So um, they do see your first findings or your first results to really try to understand why some things have been unearthed and what this means, and then they are taking these forward in terms of their decision making.
brilliant, brilliant. And we might unpick a bit more of that in terms of maybe specific examples later on. A couple of times you mentioned excitement, and the kind of excitement of freelancing, but also the excitement of storytelling. Is
Mm.
that an important thing as a researcher for you, that idea of excitement?
Yeah, I think that's really exciting, because if you really like research, and if you really like um, social research in particular, you're always interested, even if the topic is sometimes dry, or if it's something which is not your usual remit, or the topic that you have lots of knowledge on. You're always interested in understanding and just getting a greater understanding. And I love learning. So I love research because I love learning, and I always end up being wiser at the end of a project. Um, so this is a great driver, and a great motivation for me, that learning, that research, and that curiosity to understand what does it actually mean. The storytelling becomes very relevant when you're trying to explain this to someone who doesn't like research and who is not interested in learning, because they want to hear the headlines, they want to hear the so what. So then the challenge is to take, your 50-page report or your Excel sheet, and turning it into something which makes sense. So I think that's a very interesting work, when you are trying yourself to distill um, that knowledge and that information into a one pager that actually is the gist of the research.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a constant challenge, isn't it? And again, as I say, we might think around some of your ESG experience in a little bit, but I'm interested to understand as well, from your perspective, how do you know from your experience, currently or previously, how do you know insights have landed? What does it look and feel like in a business, in an organization, when your insights have landed? What impact does it make?
Um, I think you can tell, because there are some elements that resonate with the business. So that means that you have understood um, their journey, their challenge, their problems. So usually some of the insight really resonates with them, either because they knew or because they had sensed it. So that is um, a key sort of characteristic, where I say, okay, that is really landing with them. And then at the same time, there is also an element which may be surprising,
Mm.
in that they weren't expecting that, or you reveal a new angle to a current issue or a current problem, or you reveal a sort of different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So it's usually the combination of both. If it's something that, doesn't surprise them at all, then it means that some of the questions probably could have been more critical, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose one thing, and you touch on it neatly there, that maybe almost the kind of 80-20 rule, 80% should be reaffirming what they know or giving them a new slant on it, 20% new, whatever we say there. I suppose from your perspective, if a client comes back and says, actually, we already know this, how do we deal with that? What experience have you had there in terms of turning that narrative and persuading clients and highlighting the newness of the research? Can you think of anything there at all?
Well, I suppose there are, many conversations when a client comes and tells you this, because one of them is, it goes back, I suppose, to the original brief and whether there was a miscommunication or a misunderstanding of the original challenge and problem. Because if they already knew this, then, clearly we should have been asking different questions, or we should have been clearer from the beginning. But I think there is also an element of reaffirming and confirming, I suppose, whatever the knowledge is, because the we already knew this, comes with a particular moment in time before the research happened. So it could be the case that now, yes, we already knew this, but the environment has changed dramatically. So the fact that we already know this now in a completely different environment means something completely different. So I suppose it's just exploring what this actually means. It could be the case that I suppose they're also looking for some deeper or kind of more analytical findings. But I think when the research and the methodology has been robust from the beginning, this should not be hard to find, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, 100% that makes sense. And I think what's interesting there, and to me, it sounds like what you're touching on, and perhaps it's related to the idea of being a freelancer as well. But it's that whole idea of a kind of relationship with the client pre a project and then during a project. In your experience, kind of, is there anything that makes for that good client agency relationship?
I think it's key to have one touch point, obviously, a person that sort of is your coordinator in this, and is, you have recurrent conversations, and you have sort of regular, catch-ups to kind of fill them in as to what's happening. What I would caution is that it's usually very helpful to check from the beginning whether there are other people who will be involved, other people who will hear the findings or the insights at the end of this, because you don't want to get in a situation where you have a great relationship with this one person from a business, and then at some point many more stakeholders are involved who have completely different views and have completely different ideas about what the direction of the research should be. So I think it's navigating those relationships. But so long as the brief is clear from the beginning, and expectations are set out well, that should be fine.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Ellie, I know you've got a particular interest in ESG research. I wondered if you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick kind of potted history of what you've done there and what you see as perhaps the either your successes in ESG research or the challenges that you might have overcome in ESG research.
Yeah, so I love ESG. Just for people who don't know, it's environmental, social, and governance metrics, and these are used to sort of assess companies, primarily large listed companies, global companies, multinationals, against those criteria. There is a bit of a dichotomy between ESG and sustainability. So ESG is usually the term that is used for investors in terms of assessing risks in these elements. So business are assessed based on these risks, while sustainability metrics, which often may be the same metrics, um, also, however, focus on the impact that organizations have on the environment. So that's a key differentiator between ESG and sustainability. Um, ESG has been growing in terms of importance, also because of climate. Climate catastrophes and climate risk is rising, and that has brought the whole level of ESG. ESG has risen to more prominence. However, ESG is not just climate. It also includes governance and social and human rights criteria, and um, also the way boards are organized and organizations are run. Um, in terms of what has been my greater success, I suppose, um, again, it depends on the client and the organization, but especially from the NGO space, um, my greatest success have been working to construct methodologies that actually have a lot of impact attached to them. So this was in my previous roles at Equilib and at the World Benchmarking Alliance, where our methodologies were constructed to assess and hold organizations accountable. So that means that the methodology needs to focus on really important metrics. And just to give a very simple example in terms of climate, which is a topic that people understand quite easily, you can see, for example, if an organization has a net zero policy, it's usually on their website. There will be trees, a nice green website. It's something that is easily mentioned. But for instance, a methodology that would focus on impact would be about whether the company has targets, whether these targets are with sort of 5 years apart from each other, whether they track their progress against these targets, whether they have their boards and their senior leadership incentives with climate metrics. So in terms of the remuneration. So this is an example where, climate metrics could be from something very simple as to whether they have a policy to all of the other elements that I just mentioned.
So are there any tips then, in terms of measuring ESG, if an agency, a researcher is tasked with doing this, are there any particular data sources, methods that are particularly suited to this?
So again, it depends on what the measuring ESG means. There are obviously the ranking agencies like Moody's and Sustainalytics and other sort of organizations that measure ESG based on their proprietary methodology. Then there are methodologies from many NGOs that are free and easy to use. So I would assume that the first step for anyone, or for a researcher, or for a consultant asked to do this, would be to question which areas of ESG, which elements, and what are they really trying to get to, because it's a huge space, it's very complicated, and it's quite deep. So there needs to be an understanding of what the actual ask is.
And that, I suppose, comes back to the client relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you need you need to know what they're trying to achieve with the research. Is it better informed decisions? Is it thought leadership? Is it something that is going to be used internally? Is it something that is, for example, um, of a wider ESG strategy? Is it the first? Because as part of, for example, the European legislation that is coming out now, in terms of sustainability metrics for large companies, you need to undertake a stakeholder engagement exercise. So you need to do a double materiality assessment before you do your sustainability strategy. So is this where the client is coming from? So there needs to be a robust conversation, and I think it's important not to be afraid to ask.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And as you say, ESG is a very complex, deep issue. Has it changed at all, in the past few years since you've been working in the area? Can you foresee any changes happening now and into the future that we should be aware of?
So it's changed in that, like a decade ago, everyone was talking about CSR. So it was, about companies' social responsibility. Then everyone started talking about ESG and then sustainability. Then ESG became a very loaded term. There were a lot of conversations, especially in the US, um, with BlackRock saying one thing, with political leaders saying a number of sort of statements, making statements, about how all of this is sort of pushing like a woke agenda. I'm sure you've heard of all of these conversations. So, but the bottom line of this is about, responsible business, and it's about business that are responding to the demands of their stakeholders. And I think increasingly citizens and communities and um, uh, consumers want their companies to be good. I know
Yeah,
that sounds very basic, but they want business to be run solidly. They don't want to be polluting the
yeah.
rivers, destroying the planet, contributing to the climate crisis. So it's almost like common sense. So, despite any kind of political comments or any changes, the fact remains that, if you want to be running a good business, you need to be running it sustainably in the long term. Um, I do think, however, that in the current climate, a lot of companies may shy away and may find excuses to sort of say, well, actually, we don't need to have diversity targets anymore about women on the board because, we're not pressured to do so. But I think what we're going to see in the next 6 to 12 months will be an interesting split between companies who now believe that, sustainability, good governance, ethics in business is something that they need more than ever, and companies that will just sort of take it down a notch, move to second gear, and say, well, we're not going to pursue these, we're not going to try to have sustainability strategy because we don't have to now.
And if you think about your experience as a researcher, all the research that you've done, all the research that you will be doing going forward, what is that intersection, that sharp focus between research and ESG and business operations? How does that, kind of come together and crystallize? What does that look like at the sharp end? How does research help, from your experience, companies with their ESG strategies?
I think it helps because it can help them prioritize. So, in an ideal world, you would have a business which is run with, good sort of procedure and governance structures at the board, with a nice, strong net zero and environmental policy, with no violations of human rights or social issues in their supply chains, and be super profitable. But you need to prioritize and understand what what should be the focus, because that's an ideal world, and that that is far from the reality that a lot of business leaders face. So then the conversation is about, okay, assuming that you want to run your business sustainably and responsibly, what should be the priority? Should you focus more on your governance first, on your environment,
Yeah.
on
And,
bi
and
your biodiversity impact, on your social and human rights? So by doing the research, you understand what your stakeholders want, what your investors, your customers, your clients, your employees, all your relevant stakeholders, what do they want? And then you move into addressing that.
And what type of research, in your experience, might work particularly well in this area?
So that includes desktop research to understand what the company's issues are and the sector. So different sectors have different issues that are important. A services company will have completely different issues from a steel company, for example. And then it's very important to do a survey, so an opinion poll, to understand your stakeholders and their views based. You could also have a methodology that includes a 0 to 5 sort of ranking of issues or ranking of opinions. And then interviews are usually helpful to really dig deeper into certain areas. So I would say a combination of these three methods.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Almost in a way, that triangulation. And
Yeah.
I suppose one final question around here, have there been any particular challenges for you, or successes when you look back on your ESG and research career? Anything that you would particularly pull out as a high point when you think about research and ESG?
Um,
Or challenge that you
no, I
overcame?
don't. Yeah, I don't think of any high points because I just, I've enjoyed immensely working in sort of gender equality as part of the social issues. This is an issue very close to my heart, so I just find it very interesting, and I'm always interested in doing projects on that. Um, I think the challenge is that sometimes, for some of those who are interested in sustainability and ESG, because we do want to improve the world. I think the challenge is that sometimes you feel that change is not happening fast enough. So companies are not addressing some of their issues fast enough, or governments are not assisting the wider environment and the wider regulatory environment with the policies that would help accelerate some of these changes. I think that's my personal
Nice,
challenge.
nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Uh, this podcast is all about the insights. So let's, kind of think around moving forward and tie it back a bit more, even more to insights. When you look back on your career or your different experiences, are there any kind of key lessons or golden rules that you would suggest either for other professionals or up and coming insight professionals?
Um, I would say that um, don't stop asking, so what? And don't stop asking, what does this mean? So, when you see an interesting finding, or when you see sort of the first results of the research, um, you know, I would say what is very important and what is, I think, a key to actually make that research and insight valuable. It is to ask, so what? Okay, so this is a metric. 56% of I don't know, business leaders believe A. So what? So what? So what does this mean? So what does it matter? What if they believed B? What if they believed C? Why does it matter now? What can I do with this information? And if you can't do anything with this information, then go back and try to find another metric.
Yeah, yeah. Always trying to unearth another stone and seeing what else is out there. And looking forward, final question in terms of the industry in the future. Obviously, it's in a state of flux at the
Mm.
minute with lots of tech changes and the like. How do you see the industry changing, or how do you see it in 5, 10 years time?
I don't know, 5 to 10 years seems a very long time, but um, I think for the next 2, 3 years, obviously it's going to be great disturbance. AI is coming in, and all the language models, and they're very interesting. But as I heard from one of the AI gurus, they're still like very intelligent 13-year olds. So there a lot of the tools do provide faster analysis, or can be a shortcut, but you still need to sense check them. You still, just like with a 13-year-old, you still need an adult in the room. So I think there will be a lot of disturbance, but I think also in that sort of fast evolving tech environment, but also in the current political environment where there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of ungrounded statements, I think insights is more important than ever. Really, you know, grounding your findings, your results, really getting to the bottom of the findings, and really have fact checking and really sort of, how do I say, really focusing on the facts and the data rather than on just sort of superficial statements, because I think there is a high risk of disinformation and misinformation.
Yeah. I think that sentiment of insights mattering more than ever is really sums up a lot of people's feelings, and is a great way to kind of sum up everything that we've spoken around. So that's been really fascinating, Ellie. We've covered a lot of ground there, from your role, your career, ESG experience, and obviously the importance of insight to businesses. Just remains for me then to say thank you very much, Ellie. That's been really informative, and thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Brilliant. Speak to you soon.
Thanks.